Like some people say that, it's like tools of evil entities or stuff like that. But it's not. It's just a tool at the end of the day.
Welcome to the One Day at a Time podcast, where we take things one day at a time. Today in the studio, we have Sofiya.
Hi.
Hi, Sofiya. Welcome to the studio. Thank you for coming.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Can you do a quick introduction about yourself and what you do?
Okay, my name is Sofiya. I am a tarot reader. I'm a tarot reader. I do spiritual services. I mean, I also do pet communications. Yeah.
Pet communications, like cats, dogs and stuff?
Pets, so I've spoken to hamsters.
Oh, wow. So like anything basically?
Anything, mostly pets. Mostly pets. I mean, please don't ask me to talk to your housefly at home to go away, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, but mostly pets. Most of the time it's... most of the time owners have like questions, like maybe there's like certain behaviors, like why are your pets doing certain things?
Right.
Also, like sometimes they just, it's very common when sometimes people come in and they can tell that their pets are near the end of their life.
Right.
And then they just kind of like want us if is there's anything they can do to make the days better, if there's anything that they need extra just to kind of make the last days more meaningful.
I see. Okay, so but before we get started into the nitty gritty, I just wanted to kind of like establish this because I personally don't know also.
Yeah.
So what exactly is tarot card reading or tarot, the practice known as like a tarot reading?
Yeah.
And how did this come about?
Well, it's a form of divination. Divination has been around forever, since the old days. I mean, you hear of people doing things like, looking at bones, for example. There are some really kind of like cultural specific divination practices where, like you look at limes or you look at like sometimes like the innards of an animal, and then they kind of like can forecast like weather changes in happenings that are going around and all that. Like if you think about it, if you're really into like pop culture stuff and all that, if you read about like Greek mythology and all that, or like Roman mythology, there's the oracle at Delphi who would people would travel for miles to come and see her to get their fortunes told and all that. Tarot is not fortune telling. It's not fortune telling. It's divination.
What's the difference between divination?
Fortune telling is kind of like telling you things like, okay, you at this stage in your life, in your 30s, you're probably going to get into an accident, so be careful during that time and all that. Divination is more of like kind of like looking into situations, and like for example, if you have like you have a dilemma at this point of time, you don't know whether you're supposed to kind of switch jobs. You want to, but then you don't know if it's a good thing to follow your dreams, because there's all this like issues and all that, and maybe sometimes you have your own fears. So divination kind of like tells you like, okay, these things are going on. These are the kind of like maybe hidden factors that you have to pay attention to. And these are the things that you probably need to work on to make that a reality. So it's kind of, that's kind of like what tarot is actually. So tarot is more of like it's more of a reflective tool. So looking at the challenges, obstacles, opportunities, and like your blind spots, for example, to see how you can kind of like get a grip on the situation that you have on hand and how you can kind of like work best to overcome anything that's coming up.
Okay, I understand. So what are the mechanics of tarot? So like for example, I cannot think of an example, but I guess like in the different practices of like divination, for example, like maybe like palm reading or whatever, like there is like some kind of mechanics to it. Like the practice requires practice. Yeah, right.
It requires practice for sure. Yeah,
requires the practitioner to basically understand the mechanics of it and practice and learn how to interpret or read and things like that, right? So for tarot reading, what are the mechanics to it?
So there are a set number of cards in a whole deck. The deck is split into two sections. There's the major arcana and the minor arcana. Arcana just means secrets. Yeah. So the major arcana is it's basically it's a set number of cards for every single deck. Sometimes some creators they insert extra cards because they feel like, okay, this is my deck, and then I created this deck, and then they, like, my interpretation of things, they can kind of change the names a little bit, but it's all kind of pretty standard. So the major arcana and minor arcana. So the major arcana is basically like we call it the fool's journey. So starting off from the beginning where you are a blank slate, where we all start off as a blank slate, at some point in our lives, and then going through like different learning lessons, different reflective lessons and all that, and then you get to your goal at the end of it where you complete that journey. So the thing about it, that's the major arcana. Then the minor arcana is basically the suites of the elements. So there's the wands, there's the pentacles, swords, and cups. So they each correspond with the different elements. So like there's the element of fire, there's the element of earth, water, and air. So each of them kind of like represents different things. So for example, pentacles, it's everybody's favorite because it represents money. And material things, stability, and corresponding to the element of earth. There's also like the swords, for example. Swords, they look scary in the suite. So sometimes when I draw cards and swords, a lot of swords comes out. Like sometimes people are like, oh my gosh, why there's so many swords? Is there danger? But usually they correspond to the element of air. So they represent things like your thoughts, your mindset. Sometimes it's about learning something new, anything that's connected to the mind. Yeah. So they each kind of represent different aspects of, so you have the major arcana, which is your fool's journey, right? The different stages in life that you're going to go through. And then you have the minor arcana, which supports that in that sense where like if let's say, for example, you're going through a tower moment. A tower is one of the cards in the deck, right? Which is like one of the scariest one. People always freak out when the tower comes up because the tower basically means destruction. But the way tarot readers see it, destruction also means the opportunity to rebuild. That means like all your past beliefs and all that. It's time for them to kind of like break down because you need to kind of like change your mindset, for example. Then how do we figure out like what is this tower mode corresponding to? The suites will kind of like let you know. So for example, if you have been overthinking too much, your tower moment might come where, okay, fine, you got to change your mindset a little bit, maybe see things from a different light. Maybe you're too stuck in your head and you're kind of like going through cycles where, like thought habits, like you start freaking out about certain things that you have to kind of like break out of. Yeah. So they kind of like help you kind like organize the things that are happening in your life right now, and so that you can kind of like figure out what do you need to tackle, what do you need to improve on, and what can you do to actually get to the next stage in your life.
Right. So does a practitioner like yourself need to be, I guess like certain divination practice or spiritual practices require you to be chosen or have some kind of, right? Does this mean that anybody can pick up this as a skill?
Anybody can read it. Anybody can read tarot. That's the thing. I mean, I feel like there's this misconception in the media that, I think also people find it really scary because there's this misconception in the media where, like it's very often used, like tarot cards are often used to signify death, like you see a character going through something and then the death card comes out and like, oh my gosh, something bad happens. But the thing is that like, it's not like that at all. It's not like what the media portrays. So anybody can read it because the thing is at the end of the day, right, all the cards in the deck have a specific meaning to it. And you can pick that up because there are lots of like lessons out there. You can even learn it by yourself by, looking at apps or like just kind of like buy a deck because every deck comes with a handbook.
Right.
Yeah. So if you want to teach yourself that, you can pick it up and you like learn the meanings and all that. But the added value that comes in with going to someone who has been doing for a long time is because, one thing we're familiar with it and we've done it enough to kind of like understand like, the messages that are coming through.
Right.
So every reader will kind of like see the combination of cards in a different way. The extra thing that comes into it is intuition and your own kind of like connection with, we're getting a bit spiritual here, but connection with your guides or whatever spiritual practice that you have.
Right.
Yeah.
But tarot card reading not necessarily has to be linked to some kind of spiritual practice or religion, right? Like every practitioner has a different I don't know what to call it, methodology or like connection to something.
Yeah.
The process of tarot reading is like merely a medium to help you interpret certain things and something like that.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, like the cards, like sometimes people say, oh yeah, but these are just cards, you can't tell anything, that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, it's true. It's just cards, at the end of the day, it's just a tool. Yeah. I mean, there's no inherent fear about it. Like some people say that, it's like tools of evil entities or stuff like that, but it's not. It's just a tool at the end of the day. And you as a like reader, even if like you want to just kind of like start out reading for yourself or anything like that, right? You can just pick up a deck of cards, get familiar with the meanings and all that, like what each card represents, how. Eventually, with more practice, you kind of like realize that combinations of cards means different things also. Yeah, so you have the basic building blocks, like it's just like Lego, for example, right? You have a red block, you have a green block, right? But sometimes the thing is the combinations that you that comes out gives you different things. Yeah. So that comes with practice.
Right. So how does it work in a sense where, okay, so now you have the deck of cards, you understand essentially the meaning behind each card as well as the combination of the meanings behind. So let's say today, right, there are 3 people sitting in front of you. When you draw cards, how do you know like which is it? How does the forces of the universe, decide like what card to, how does all that work?
So it's kind of like, it's different for every reader, for example, so every reader shuffles differently, for example, and every reader has like their own kind of cues that I'm going to stop shuffling here. This is the card that I'm going to pick out. Yeah. So every reader has the difference. So there's some readers who shuffle nonstop until cards jump out. Because their belief is, and the way they work with their own cards is that, okay, if the card jumps out, that means this is the card that is for you. Some readers, like you see in the movies, they'll spread out the cards, you pick the cards, and then they interpret the cards for you because that is you picking the cards, you interacting with the energies at work.
Right.
Yeah. Or there are some readers who, I'm going to shuffle for you because I'm going to use my intuition to kind of like know when is it that I'm going to stop.
I see. So there is no set way.
There's no right and wrong way. Yeah, there is no right and wrong way because the thing is like I think the thing is that sometimes we're so used in our culture also to kind of like have like a textbook guide.
Right.
Yeah, sometimes like that's how we are brought up, right? Like there's a methodology to everything.
Right.
But I think that's the thing with this, right? Because you're relying a lot of like your own intuition, your own connection and all that, right? There's really no right or wrong.
Okay.
Some readers also have like a set number. They shuffle 3 times and then they split the deck and then they shuffle another 3 times and they split the deck.
Right.
So it really depends how the reader works with their own tools.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So you mentioned that there is the major arcana and the minor arcana. In a reading session, how many cards do you pick out from the major and minor? Is it always set or it depends?
So the thing is, you don't pick out separately. It's all in the deck at one go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So for example, I'll make sure that I shuffle really well.
Right.
Get a really good mix and all that. And then I'll just, for me at least, right, I'll shuffle until like, for me, I rely on my intuition when to kind of stop. Most times, sometimes I'll shuffle 3 times and then like, okay, then I'll kind of like feel like, okay, this is the correct one. I'm gonna like draw from here. Then, so the number of cards, there are a lot, if you Google it, right, there are lots of different tarot spreads.
Right.
Yeah. So like they creators will kind of like, or other readers, for example, they will have like, like this, if you want to find out, whether you should go for job A or job B, there is a spread that they created for like, maybe like there are 10 cards. Some spreads have like 4 cards or 3 cards. The most common one is the Celtic cross. So that is 10 cards. For general readings and like you want to really get behind a certain situation and see what's going on. But some readers do that. Yeah, some readers have a specific spread.
Right.
And then you kind of like, let's say you want to get a certain service, like for example, like maybe it's a relationship reading, right?
Right.
Then they'll tell you that, okay, this is the spread I use for relationships and this is the one we're going with.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, but there's some readers who, like me also, we kind of like don't have like a spread. Sometimes I feel called to use a certain spread, like the general ones, like maybe like a Celtic cross. But sometimes most of the times actually, like, I mean, if someone comes in with a question, and they, this is their situation, and not sure what to do, right? Then I will work with them to kind of like look at the questions that we should ask. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And then like when I draw cards, it really depends. Like sometimes it's 3. Sometimes I feel called to pull a bit more.
Right.
Yeah.
So do people who come to like tarot reading sessions always come with some kind of question or problem? Like what happens if somebody comes in and say, I'm pretty happy with my life. I'm just here to kind of explore.
Yeah.
Right. I have no question. I have no situation that I'm particularly dealing with. So like what would you do?
Oh, then I just give them a general reading. So for like it happens quite a bit actually.
Right.
Yeah. So sometimes the thing is like I see questions like that usually when people come in and like they want to book a session, right? Because my sessions are quite private, are very private actually, right? It's most of the time they have a situation.
Yeah,
that
makes sense.
that they want to kind of look into. But sometimes, like we do things like, like pop-up events and all that, right? Yeah, like sometimes it's like even like company events, that kind of stuff. People come in and then they're like, okay, I'm not really sure what to ask.
Right.
They don't really have, exactly like you said, they don't really have like a pressing situation.
Yeah.
Or sometimes maybe they're a bit scared to ask because it's fine,
Right.
Usually I just give a general reading. So we'll go like, okay, so if there's nothing really of a concern, let's just pull out something. Maybe there's a message for you that you need to kind of take note of. Yeah.
I see. Okay, I see. This is very, very cool, very interesting. How does a practitioner, like a tarot card reader, become one? Do you like go through some kind of apprenticeship, or you learn from YouTube, or like how does it work generally?
I mean, it varies, and there are lots of self-made tarot readers out there, which is fantastic. I mean, like people who actually put in the effort to kind of practice on their own. Learn the meanings, kind of like look up that different interpretation and books and all that. There are, of course, classes. I mean, if you Google it and all that, there are lots of classes from like international places and all that that can kind of like teach you their methods. But at the end of the day, because the thing is, the practice is very personal. It's very personal to each reader. Every reader will have a different way to kind of like even tell you the messages that are coming out. So yeah, most people are self-taught. I would say most people are self-taught.
Right.
But it can also be a mixture, like
Right.
you have kind of like maybe in your teenage years you picked it up for a bit and then you kind of like just do it for yourself and then you decide that, hey, I want to get better.
Right.
So I'm going to sign up for a class.
Right.
And then supplement that. Yeah.
Okay. So then I guess my question, I guess this is a very personal question also.
Yeah.
How do you know, I know it's different, especially when it comes to these things, it's different for everybody. But for you personally, right, how did you know you were ready to kind of be somewhat of a practitioner that reads for other people?
Yeah.
Because, kind of like, okay, I think this is like dumbing it down a little bit too much, but like, if you want to drive a car, you go through like some lessons, you go through a test and you get a driving license, right?
Yeah.
And the more, say, intangible stuff like makeup, you can be a self-taught makeup artist, and that depends on like your idea of what aesthetic is and stuff. And like at some point you feel like, okay, I think my brushwork is good. I think it's ready. I'm ready, right? So for like stuff like that is a little bit more intangible. There is nothing to really, like quantify whether this is you're a good tarot card reader or a bad tarot card reader. Like how do you personally determine like, okay, I think I have practiced enough, I have sat with like the cards enough, and I'm ready to be a practitioner. Like how do you determine?
I think the thing is that like, okay, I can't speak for every tarot reader out there, but I think like from like my friends who are doing it also and all that, right? Majority of us start off with reading it for our friends. Yeah, so like, you pick up a deck of cards, right? And then you start reading for yourself and you try to figure it out and all that. And somehow that becomes like, because you talk to your friends and all that, and like people start to know that you do this, right? And then you start to like for fun read for your friends, and then you get feedback from that, and sometimes the thing is that, I mean, this is before you kind of like actually open it up and all that. It depends, like some people don't have to practice for so long, and then they kind of feel like, okay, I'm ready for it. And then sometimes most of the time it's word of mouth. You know, like I read from my friend, and then my friend's like, oh wow, you know, like that's really accurate and all that. And then she tells another friend, for example, and then someone else comes in. Then that's how you kind of like slowly kind of like build your practice. I mean, I can't speak for every reader out there, you know, but that's how it happened for me.
I see. So I guess for yourself and probably a lot of tarot readers out there, it's kind of you practicing it with people that you already know and realizing that actually working or like actually quite accurate. Then you sort of build up that confidence to be able to say that you're a practitioner lah, right? When it comes to tarot card reading, how do people, is there like a market rate? How do people usually charge? How do you charge for it and stuff like that?
So usually it depends. Like I think every reader has their own comfort level also. I know some readers don't do like live readings. So they
What is live readings?
Live readings would be like now, you know, like we sit down for half an hour or an hour, and then we talk about the issues at hand, and I draw the cards out for you live as we go along.
Right.
Those are a little bit more flexible because, like, for example, if you come in with one issue, right? And then we look at everything, and then it comes off that, okay, there's a certain obstacle that you need to cross. And then it's flexible in the sense where, like, okay, fine, so we can kind of like straight away dive into that obstacle. What's going to happen? Then, some people do just like through email, you know, or DMs. They, you know, like they communicate over text. That's it. Yeah. So it really depends.
How does that work? So like, you talk to somebody, and then like you as a practitioner, you sit in your own like studio or practice, and then you just draw, and then you communicate via DMs and all that.
Or you send, like, some people send like over a report.
But I mean, I guess this might be a dumb question, but how does the energies of the universe know like who you're reading for?
I mean, okay, that comes with practice.
Right.
That comes with practice. So the thing is, like, for example, when someone, it's very common when someone kind of like comes to you and like, okay, I need a reading, right? Very common for kind of like practitioners to ask like, okay, can I have your name or your birth date? And then sometimes they don't need name and birth date. Sometimes they just need your picture. Depending on what the reader kind of like needs to kind of like connect to your energy.
So every reader is different.
Every reader is different. Yeah. Some people are like, you know, like sometimes when I feel like even with readings, right, if let's say someone coming to me, right, I mean, I kind of know who you are, you know, like I know your name and all that stuff, right? So at least we can get acquainted, and you come in for a reading. But sometimes the thing is like, they depends. Sometimes they need your picture. So it really kind of like depends how the reader themselves. This kind of takes work from the reader because it takes them. It's not only just about practicing reading the cards. It's also about knowing yourself and how you make connections with energy that's around you. So everybody is different, right? So sometimes people need to look at your photographs. Sometimes they just need a name. Sometimes some practitioners, they don't really need anything. They just kind of like, okay, fine. Like, you know, the fact that you are already communicating with me opens up a communication line so I can connect to you via that line.
Right.
Yeah.
So, like, it always depends on the practitioner.
It always depends. And that's the job of the practitioner to figure out how their own energies make that connection.
Right. Okay, so for you personally, right? You okay?
It's a bit stuffy.
Yeah. Sorry. You're right. You need more water? Okay, great. Yeah. So how for you personally, how did you get into the practice? Like, out of all the different like spiritual or divination practices in the world, why did you pick like tarot card reading, or like why did it pick you?
I think the thing is that like I said just now, right? Like it started like as an interest when I was a teenager. But then the thing is, back then, I mean, like, it's not like as if I had like people, like friends who knew how to do it or anything. I mean, I just kind of like learned things by myself. But then as a teenager, you have other priorities, you know? Yeah. So it was kind of like just like like the deck was there. I mean, I just pull out once in a while, and like I didn't really make the effort to kind of like really kind of like understand what the concepts were about. I guess as a teenager, it was a bit difficult. So because like, you know, you have other things to do.
Yeah.
And I think it was like only when I was older, where I actually kind of like, okay, like I started realizing that the concepts that were in the cards that made up the whole thing, right, were actual like concepts that were very relatable to everybody's lives.
Right.
And some of the things you don't realize it, until you go through a certain event or a life-changing, like a certain instance in your life, right? And then you start to feel like, oh yeah, that is exact. I understand this concept now. So I think COVID did a lot of things for a lot of people. So it was only like because in lockdown and all that where I started really kind of like looking into it and like, okay, fine, I understand what's going on. I've been through enough kind of like life experiences to kind of like see how the concept relates. And then you start to realize that, okay, a lot of these things are universal concepts. A lot of these things a lot of people go through. It's not unique in a way to one person. So then, I kind of started out with just reading for friends. Just simple things, like, hey, like something's going on, then let me just pull a couple cards for you, that kind of thing. Then it kind of just expanded from there. Yeah, it started as a hobby. Yeah.
Right. It's like an innate interest, and then you kind of develop on it.
Yeah.
Like most passion-driven things lah.
Yeah.
Okay, so one question that I'm quite keen to know is that in your opinion, right, have you ever like had a client or had an experience where tarot card reading becomes a negative experience? Like for example, you draw a set of cards and then you kind of like break it down with your client, but the client becomes very worried that like something will happen and becomes like super paranoid, which affects things like sleep, health, and whatever. So some people don't take readings very objectively sometimes also, right? Like you kind of overthink on it and things like that. Have you had any like negative experiences like that with any client that the reading has actually caused a lot more fear, which like, because just now you also mentioned, right, people are afraid of like the swords or like the tower, like the tarot reading, like as much as you try to kind of like mitigate, you communicate with your client, some people like can't help but be afraid when certain combinations come up, right? Because maybe they have some prior knowledge to like the combinations, and the reading ends up paralyzing their life. Like they don't dare to go out because they're scared they cross the road, then something happened, kind of thing. Has that ever happened with you or your clients?
Thankfully no. Thankfully no. Because I think like you said, like a lot of it has to do with communication. So sometimes the thing is like when instances comes up where people are a little bit afraid, or because they see the cards and they're like, oh my gosh, what is this thing? Like especially like if the death card comes out, right? Like, oh my god, am I gonna die? No, because it's a lot of communication.
Right.
So sometimes the thing is like you have to kind of like explain that, okay, this card looks scary. Sometimes even they don't even know the meaning. Sometimes the image on the card looks scary. So you just kind of have to like, they usually freak out. They're usually like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
But then I just have to communicate with them like, okay, don't worry too much. I know it looks like a scary card, but there are, let me draw out the cards and let me tell you what the story is coming out, and so that the interpretation that's coming out, so that you can rest assured that like even if something scary is going to happen, even if it does indicate that you're going to go through a little bit of a trial, I will always follow it up with, okay, so now it says that, you're going to go through a trial. Let's see what you can do about it.
Right.
Yeah. So a lot of it is communication.
Right.
And also kind of like, like you got to see the energy of the person that's coming to you also. There are times where people come and they seek a reading, you can tell that, sometimes they've exhausted all other options that they have.
Right.
Yeah, trying to rationalize it, or sometimes trying to even like seek counsel and all that. I mean, a tarot reading is no replacement for proper therapy and all that kind of stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but sometimes they just need like some kind of assurance or some kind of guidance of what to do. So if someone comes over and like I can tell that, like they've been overthinking the situation a little bit too much, right? It's up to me. It's my prerogative to kind of like make sure that I communicate what's happening to them in a way that does not trigger them.
Right.
Yeah, because we all have our triggers,
For sure.
and sometimes the thing is that even small things like, like if you go to a reader and the reader reads the message in a way that is very authoritative. Some people have issues with authority because maybe
Right.
it's just an issue, and they can't absorb the message.
Right.
So a lot of it is communication and kind of like understanding where the person is coming from, what state they're in, so that you can kind of like relay the message honestly without sugarcoating it, but also in a way that they can absorb and they can kind of take away something from. Yeah.
Like, so, like for you, right, like personally, because every practitioner is different, but you are really like a facilitator. You're not here to kind of tell people what to do, and you're really like trying to facilitate their journey. Hopefully they get a little bit more insight as to like what the next step could be and stuff like that, right? Like it's not like some magic witch thing.
It's like the thing is like I like to tell people that like the magic is in them. Yeah,
Right.
So the magic is in them.
That's your tagline.
Yeah, you make things happen,
Okay.
like the reading can tell you things that, okay, you're going to go through a lot of trials. But think about it, like if you go through a lot of trials and we look into how you can kind of like overcome these trials, right? It's still up to you to do it, I've had clients who who go through periods of time where like they feel a bit lost. And then it does show that they need to kind of like step up a little bit. And then they put the effort to do it. And then and then they'd come back and tell me a couple of months later, like, oh my gosh, that was like so amazing because I don't even recognize the person I was before because they've actually managed to overcome it, which is great. But then on the flip side, it also really kind of like, you have free will. So it really depends. There are instances where people have come and said that, okay, they have a little bit of a situation and then they're not sure what to do.
Right.
But then the message comes off as, okay, you got to be careful of maybe not being too impulsive. Already it kind of shows out like you need to control your anger, or something like that there. But in the instance when it happens, they can't. And then things kind of like go down the drain after that. Right. So you do have the free will to kind of do it because what it does is that it relays to you and gives you a clearer picture, but it's still up to you to kind of like exercise your own will to make sure like, things don't go wrong or like,
Right. Like, because you're talking about free will, right? I'm just curious as to your opinion on like the ethical practices of divination in general, but for you specifically tarot card reading.
Yeah.
Because it's something that is not the most tangible. It's a process and a thing that is not super tangible. Like cannot really touch. Technically can, but you get what I mean, right?
Yeah, I totally get what you mean. Yeah.
Say like just now you were talking about like communication and like for example like this does not replace therapy and like most therapists need to go through some kind of education certification process and like has a board to report to for like ethical practices and things like that. But when it comes to certain things like tarot reading or divination practices, there is no like board to report to. There's no reports to write. It's really up to your own moral compass and I think in this realm of like divination or whatever, ethics is always a big question because it could be extremely ethical, like for you, like just based on the way our conversation, like you take responsibility of your craft and your clients and things like that, which I think is a part of like ethical practices lah. But some other practitioners might not, because it at the end of the day it's still business lah, right? You need to make money to kind of like survive and whatever, and the balancing of like your craft and ethics, morals versus like generating revenue can cause certain conflicts of interest sometimes. So like, what is your general opinion towards ethical practices in divination? Like, how do you personally like navigate and mitigate it if somebody were to kind of like question it?
I think the thing is that there are some general guidelines that most practitioners will kind of like, because as long as you're in this practice, you have come across these guidelines, even if like, for example, if you decide to take a class with like someone who's like, like teaching tarot and all that, right? They would most likely share things about guidelines and ethics when it comes to this kind of stuff. So some of the ones like I mentioned, it doesn't replace therapy. So if you do have mental health issues, or you find that you are going through depression or anything like that, right? You seek a counselor, seek a therapist. Especially if like even from a reading, right, it looks like you are in a bad space, or like you're in a bad space. I would tell, like, there are instances where people come and then they say like, oh, they don't, like, you can tell they don't just need they're not looking for a reading, they're looking for someone to talk to about their issues. So I mean, I do tell them like, okay, maybe you do need to seek some therapy for yourself, because these are like innate issues that you have, and a reading's not going to tell you how to do that. Like, you do need some kind of guidance in how to get over all of this. I don't read for health issues also. So sometimes people come in and then they say like, oh, how's my health going to be for the next 5 years? I don't do that, because your health is really dependent on how you take care of yourself.
Right.
And I mean, it's not my place to tell you that, like to read cards and say that, you need to be careful, you might get like lung problems, that kind of thing. I'm not a doctor,
Right.
I'm in no place, it's not my place to kind of diagnose things like that.
Right.
I don't read for finance issues also. So like, if you're gonna come, I mean, there are people who come and say like, okay, someone came up to me with an investment opportunity, should I do it, that kind of thing. So like, I'm like, no, you need to seek proper like
financial advice.
There are people who are qualified for that. There are people whose job is to primarily give you financial advice. That's the best thing that you can do your research and all that. So that's the main, like the general ones.
Right.
Yeah, things like that. Like there are guidelines that are around for, and most practitioners kind of like follow them. But I think like you mentioned, there's no laws.
Right. Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like if a doctor were to wrongly prescribe you a medication, there are like repercussions for that and all that. Yeah. So there are no laws in that sense, that kind of thing. So that's why, to a certain extent, like when it comes to something intangible like that, right? While the reader, the practitioner has their own responsibility to make sure that they're not overstepping boundaries that they're not supposed to cross. But also the reader, the reader also has to make their own judgment. It's just like when you choose someone, especially considering the fact that you come with a lot of these issues are really pressing personal issues. We do say also sometimes like, I'm totally okay if you go to another reader, or like you read with me and you don't like my style, you go to another one, because what is more important is you get what you need from the practitioner. So like the reader also has to do a little bit of homework to make sure that, the person that they're going to is not going to overstep certain boundaries.
It makes sense. I think I think what you said is very sensible, and that is also why I think like picking your reader is very important lah. Like when somebody talks to you, you kind of allow that person to understand your whole approach, your workflow and everything. And if the person trusts you, then there is some kind of relationship established, and then you can then go on to practice ethically lah, right? Whereas like some people that might choose to forego, it really boils down to one's moral compass and all of that,
it
right?
really does,
and the responsibility and understanding like the responsibility that is on your shoulders as a reader, because you can say stuff to people that can completely change their life for the better or for worse. Right? And
exactly.
it's a huge responsibility. It's like, sure, you don't have a PhD in like virology or whatever, but like it is still because you are seen as a figure of like a, how do I put this? You're seen as like a KOL, like a figure of like
you have
respect.
you have that. I mean, that's the thing that's really important, because you have, every reader knows that they do have a sense of influence, over what they kind of tell their clients and all that. So you need to, everyone has to know that, like, I mean, like every reader would have their own way of being responsible for the influence.
Because it's a tool that can be used for good reading and everything, but it also seems like it's a tool that can be very easily used for like manipulation and stuff like that, right? Because there's no like court to judge whether you're a good tarot card reader, kind of thing, right? So for you personally, you started because you kind of got into it because of passion, and then like now you're doing it as a just now I wanted to kind of talk about that because I think that's quite interesting. Like you mentioned you do like company events and stuff like that, like live reading. How does that work? Like how long does a live reading session like last? Because if you're doing like an event, right? Surely you can't be reading for more than like 5-10 minutes because like there might be a queue. I don't know how does it work?
Yeah. So like it depends. It depends on the crowd. So for example, like if I'm reading at an event or for example at a bar, right? Where they have that, right? So most of the time it really depends on the crowd. So if there's gonna be a huge line of people, right? I can't do a very in-depth readings.
Yeah.
And most times for events, it's really kind of like general. It's great when like, they come and they say, okay, fine, I'm not sure if like I should quit my job right now, for example. Very common question, right?
Yeah.
We can see that quite easily, it's not going to take so long.
Right.
And if like, let's say they're not sure, especially at events, people are not sure what to ask and they're just trying it out, right? So general readings are quite quick also. But if let's say, they want something, it really depends on the crowd.
Right.
Yeah. So like, so I've done, events like bachelor's nights, for example.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, that's fun.
So the thing is like for that, I mean, obviously we can kind of like customize the time. Like if let's say they only have like an hour and they have like three party over there, right? Then okay, fine. Then we split it up. Like okay, fine. You get a certain amount of time. You get a certain amount of time. And then we'll kind of go for there. And then sometimes the thing is like for if it's like personal events and all that, is more customizable. But especially if it's like a corporate event, then you gotta like stick to the time.
Right.
And sometimes people come in and they're like, oh my gosh, like like they have more questions from that one reading, right?
Yeah.
Then I'll kind of like have to direct them like, okay, fine, like since we don't have time here, but if you really do want to look in it, you can just contact me separately.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's like super interesting. And for me personally, I've never really been someone who is very interested in this kind of things like divination, because like my personal belief is that whatever is gonna happen anyways. So we just deal with it one day at a time, which is like the title of the podcast, right? Yeah. So we just handle it as it comes, because I think sometimes when we know a little bit too much, we can overthink the situation.
Yes, definitely.
Like for me personally. Yeah. But since you're here, right? Would you be open to doing like a very quick general reading?
Okay.
Right,
okay.
Just to see like how the process goes and like get a few of the cards and everything.
Okay.
I don't really have any questions
Sure.
in mind, but I'm very curious to see like how it actually works lah. Cause I've never really been one to be like, oh, tarot card reading, let's try, right? Yeah. So since you're here and you're open, like let's do a very quick one, like just really for me to understand, and for anybody who's interested in this, right, to kind of I've never actually seen the cards before.
All right.
In person. Okay, so this is like how it works, right? Say I meet you at an event.
Yeah, so like you meet me at an event,
company
and then
event.
like you're like, okay, like you're not sure what to ask.
Yeah.
So you want something general.
Yeah.
Okay, so like first thing I'll ask you, like, okay, fine. If you want something general, is there a specific area in your life you want to kind of look into, whether it's work or like your personal life, or something could be personal growth.
Right.
Sometimes people are like, okay, fine. Then they can be a bit more specific. Like, okay, I just want a general reading in terms of like my career, for example.
Right.
Then we can look into that, because I try to make the reading as valuable to you as possible.
Right.
There are instances where people are like, I don't know, I mean, just anything.
Okay.
And then most times the reading comes out super general,
Okay.
And then like I have to tell them that, okay, so because you didn't specify what you kind of like want to look into, then you're gonna have to see how it applies to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought of a question.
Yes.
Since you're talking about this. So let's talk about career, right?
Yeah.
So for me personally, I am somebody who likes to do many things. I have a lot of passions, and I somehow managed to kind of make all of them a part of my career lah. Right. And in our society, people always say, you can't do so many things. Like it's you gotta focus on one thing in order to be successful in it, and kind of thing. But for me, my take on it is that I don't really care, because as long as I enjoy what I'm doing, I'm making a good living from everything that I'm doing.
Yep.
It's the way that I want to live my life.
Yeah.
So the question is focusing on one thing more suitable, or should I carry on to do what I've always done in my life that has always somehow worked out for me, which is to do multiple things at once in terms of my career?
Okay, so since you're asking okay, so from what I understand from your question, you want to see whether which is more beneficial for you, to stick to what everybody has told you, or to do it your way.
Correct.
This whole time.
Correct. And like the which is more beneficial for me, not in a financial sense, but in a
your happiness.
Correct, wholesome, like make enough money can already kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay, so usually what I do is because you have two options there, I will draw cards for both options.
Okay.
So we're gonna look into like if you do things your way.
Okay.
Okay. So if you do things your way, what are the things that are going to come up for you? So you're in terms of like your general contentment.
Right.
If there's going to be any obstacles that you feel like you're going to have to overcome, and then we'll see also like if you do it like how everybody says.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I disclaimer. I have no idea what these cards mean, but I've always been very interested in like tarot cards specifically and astrology, because the aesthetics very nice lah. I mean, it's the aesthetics.
Astrology and tarot go together also, because there are lots of elements also within it. I mean, there are certain astrological correspondences for the different cards as well.
Right.
Yeah, so you can merge it. Like a lot of the practices are actually like very like they're overlaps.
Right.
Yeah.
It's complementary lah. It's not
exactly.
like one or the other.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the thing that attracts me about these things, right, is the aesthetics of it. Not so much like the I want to know, but I think the aesthetics of it is super cool.
I mean, that's something very common also. Like a lot of people say like the cards are really nice, and the cards are really nice, and like I know some friends who don't read tarot, but they, because like I've done readings for them and they like the cards and then they buy it because they're like, oh my god, the aesthetics are really nice.
Imagine that as a tattoo on your arm. It's like super cool, man.
People have like tarot card tattoos.
Yeah. Oof. So how do you determine like how many cards to draw?
I use intuition.
You just go.
I use intuition. Like sometimes I draw 3 cards and I'm just like, okay, this is enough. The message is here. Sometimes I feel like right now I feel like I need to draw 1 more.
Right.
So I just kind of like listen to myself and So for the readers, like they will know how to listen to themselves. Yeah, it's better that I would say, I mean, at least for me, that I listen to myself rather than use someone else's methodology. Like, you shuffle 3 times and then you draw 1 card, that kind of thing. Yeah. Okay, so the top row is if you do things your way.
Okay.
The bottom row is if you decide to listen to everybody else and do things like the conventional way. Okay, so when I read it, right, I read it all together.
Right.
There are readers who will go through one by one and all that. But for me, when I see it, right, I see the story that comes up to me.
Got it.
So I think, so I'll go through with it, right?
Yeah.
So for this, right, if you kind of like decide to do things your way, you have so many cups here. So the cups is already about like your passions and your emotions and all that, right? So you're going to be a lot happier. With every new kind of like project that you do, right, you're going to discover like a new source of happiness and of joy. Even, for example, if you try something and you realize that it's not for me, that is also a source of joy because, okay, now you know it's not for you.
Right.
Yeah. And then like I can turn my focus somewhere else. But you do have to be careful about being spread out too much. Like you want to try everything, like you said, you want to try everything and all at once, right? You do have to I wouldn't say like focus on one thing, but kind of like strategize in that sense of where you want to kind of like expand your energy. Yeah. So be careful about like being everywhere all at once and wanting to control everything all at the same time. In terms of happiness, because you have a 5 of Cups reverse here, 5 of Cups upright, the 5 are always about conflict.
How do you know if it's a reverse card?
It comes out reverse. I'm reading it towards myself. This is upright. This is reverse.
Oh.
Yeah. Some people don't read reversals.
Oh.
Yeah, but it's up to the reader.
I see.
So the 5 of Cups, 5 is always about like conflict, right? So when you see it in a reverse position, okay, fine, that's great. That means you, in terms of like your passion and all that, right, you won't feel like you're always needing more.
Right.
Like there's always something that is wasted, or there's always something that you're not trying out. And then the thoughts of or I wouldn't say maybe the thoughts or like the feelings of maybe I should have done that. Maybe I should have tried something new, that kind of thing, right? That regret, that feeling of regret is not going to come in because you would have tried it and you have realized that what works, what doesn't work for you. As long as you keep things like, you focus your energy. Yeah, not on one thing, but like strategy. I wouldn't say strategize also, but like kind of like know where you want to expand your energy.
Got it.
Yeah, you will go through a lot of because death here, don't be frightened.
Okay,
death is always about rebirth. Something has to die before something can be reborn again, right?
Right.
So you might go through periods of that, especially considering the fact that you want to try different things, right? Maybe you try something for a while and you realize that okay, this is not me anymore. Being okay with that okay, fine, like maybe even this podcast one day, you decide that okay, this is not me anymore.
Right.
I want to focus on something else.
Right.
That constant reinvention of yourself, of realizing that okay, maybe this served you for a period of time and it's not anymore, and it's okay to let that part of that part of your life die, and then moving on to something else. This, and then you have the emperor at the end, right? The emperor energy is all about like being able to kind of like you are the emperor, you're in control of your environment. You're in control of yourself. You're in control of where you expend your energy, what you decide to kind of like let die, what you decide to kind of like grow from there, right?
Right.
It's a lot more control. Yeah, and I feel like that's probably what you kind of like want also to a certain extent, because like you don't want to fit into a box.
Right. Yeah,
if you were to fit into a box, the box is of your own making. So that will give you that energy and that kind of like power of that power over like what's going on in your life and how your life is going to take off.
So the order of the cards matter as well.
The order matters too. But the thing is like, especially, okay, the order matters when you're using a spread, for example, like if the set spread, right? Okay, this order means this and all that. But because I read it very intuitively and I read it like as a flow, right? Hard to explain, but I kind of like see it and I'm like okay, fine, I know the story.
Okay, got it. So you
I know the
interpret
message
it
that's
and
coming up.
you just deliver the message. Cool. Yeah, sounds about right actually. Okay.
Then if let's say you do it any way that everybody else has kind of like told you to do, right? Page of Pentacles and like King of Cups reverse, right? Like it will feel like it just kind of feels that like like you will never be happy. Yeah, you never have that solid satisfaction with what you are doing with your life. That solid satisfaction that, okay, I am creating the world that I live in, You're just kind of like, okay, like going with the flow and all that, right? And you may end up, right, because you're not satisfied, right? You may end up kind of like, not really caring about the, like there's no stability basically.
Right.
Yeah, you're just kind of doing things because like, sorry, you're just kind of like doing things because that is the way you've been told to do, but you won't find any like groundedness in it at all. Groundedness, that word.
Yeah.
But you won't find your ground with that. And the Tower is here also.
Right.
So the Tower is like, like because you don't find that stability and that contentment in it, right? You might end up kind of like eventually also kind of like breaking away from it. Yeah. Because the Tower is about, okay, fine, I've done this for so long. I've done it the way everybody tells me to, right? But it's not making me happy and I don't feel rooted. I don't feel any kind of like belonging to what I'm doing and the world that I'm living in, right? Then you might end up breaking away from it also and finding something else to do. Like picking up new skills, like maybe it doesn't matter, then you will find like new skills, or you might kind of like try to kind of like want to forge your own way through it anyway. But because the moon is here, right? It might be because if it comes to the point where you feel so disconnected with what you are doing and how your world is like, right? That when you do come to kind of like find your own way out of it, right? You might not go in the right direction, because like especially if it comes to the point where you feel like I can't do this anymore,
right?
Yeah, and then you just decide to like just go out there and just do whatever it is, right? You might get a bit misguided for a little bit. So just looking at both of this, right? I mean, it feels like how you're living your life right now is actually gonna like eventually give you that control, that you created the world that you're living in right now. And this is my life. It may not be perfect, but I did the things that I wanted to do. And even though there were some failed projects and all that stuff, and I realized that they were not what I wanted to do. But the thing is, it gives you that freedom to kind of forge your own world.
Right.
Yeah. So even if you didn't, it feels like, even if you didn't do it, right, it feels like you might end up wanting to break away anyway, you know, like you might come to a breaking point where you feel like, I can't do this anymore. And then when that happens, because you don't have the experience from starting out and that conviction in yourself, right? You might just end up like kind of lost a little bit.
Right. Wow.
How does that resonate?
I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense to me lah, because I've always lived my life in a way that I do what I want to do, but not at the detriment or the suffering of the people around me. So like it's a balance lah, right? It's a balance between what I want to do and still giving the people around me like a good life and things like that. And it's the way that I've always wanted to do things. And I like, through one of the reasons why I asked if you can do a reading is because I want to experience the process, since I've never experienced it. And now that I've experienced it, I gotta say that I don't think this is a skill that just anybody can pick up. I think it requires a lot of innate capabilities to be able to articulate things very well, like how you have done it. And I really don't think that this is, even if you might be able to read it well, like to be able to be a practitioner, right? Well, I think it's really tough, because you need to learn how to read people and articulate it in a way that is comprehensive for the other person. So it's actually a pretty damn freaking hard skill to the practice itself. I mean, I don't know much about it, right? But like I do know communications, right? Because that's what I do. And so do you. And I think like the way that you have done it is very well articulated, right? It makes the person that is sitting with you feel like connected, whether it's true or not, right? And it doesn't really matter. Like, makes the person feel like, hey, I understand what you're saying. And I think that's very important. And I think that is a very, very difficult skill that requires years and years of practice and of course life experience also. So like, hats off to you, really. You have my respect. I really think it's a very, very difficult thing to do. And thank you for reading my whatever.
No problem, no problem at all.
So
I think like maybe to add on to that also, like it does take a lot of practice, but it's not such an unattainable skill, you know, like I said at the beginning, like anybody can do it, you know, like, and a lot of it is also like understanding yourself, you life experiences and all that, right? A lot of readers have actually done a lot of work on themselves also to understand what are their biases, how they've gone through things, because the last thing that you kind of like want to do as a reader also is to impart your own bias into the situation.
Absolutely.
Especially when it comes to relationship readings and someone's like telling you about their horrible ex-partner, and then you're like, oh my gosh, that sounds like my ex-partner. Right. Like,
you skewed to your...
you don't want to do that. So like a lot of like inner work also and all that too, and communication like you said is quite important also.
It's really not easy, because like the whole part of I mean, even through my personal experience, the part of like, working with yourself, like sitting with yourself, can be very, very scary in the beginning, because you're basically like bare, and you know, it's a lot to work through lah, and until you get to a stage where you accept, then you can start to kind of figure shit out and whatever, right? Yeah, thank you so much, Sofiya.
No problem,
I really appreciate
Thank you so
your
much.
sharing. And I think it has really helped me understand a little bit more about divination in general lah, because I think it's not something that I personally like go seek out, and I don't think for many people it's something that they seek out unless they chance upon it, or like there's a situation that kind of propels them towards this, right? So based on my personal experience, I think tarot card reading can be quite a interesting experience if you want to try it out, you know, just whether it's for something that you are looking for or it's just for fun, right? I think it can be quite fun also. If anybody would like to kind of like know more about what you do and your reading, your services and things like that, where can they find you online?
Museofmagick on Instagram.
Nice. So Museofmagick on Instagram, how can they make a booking or like
just click on the link on my bio, or if you're not sure what to do, just kind of like drop me a DM.
Nice. All right. Thank you so much, Sofiya, for coming in and sharing.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next time on the One Day at a Time podcast. Peace.